What we see here is one of the most important scenes in this entire show, and it is proof that everything we have been led to believe has been a manipulation by the evil forces living in this town.
He came in a car just like the rest of us. Thought his yellow suit was funny. We thought he was just like us. We made him our friend when everyone died. I found Mom out by the bottle tree. He was eating her.
This scene is obviously one of the most crucial for us to even start to understand just how badly we are being played by the evil forces living in this town. Like, think about this. We literally see that the woman in this drawing that Victor claims is his mother was wearing a white dress when she was killed by the monsters at the bottle tree. Now, the reason why this matters is very simple. We literally saw what Victor's mom was wearing right before she was killed at the bottle tree. And guess what? It obviously is not a white dress. So who is this woman? And why does Victor believe that she is his mother? Because as it is right now, this drawing literally does not make any sense. There's still something else that we have to point out here, which is that you cannot somehow attribute the massive discrepancies between this painting and the scene showing how Victor's mom died to Victor somehow having forgotten or confusing his memories of what happened to his mother due to some sort of coping mechanism for dealing with trauma. Because the vision that shows Victor's mom's death comes from Tabitha. It did not come from Victor. The only times in the entire show when we see Victor's mom on the same day that she died from Victor's perception is with the scene of his mother leaving the root cellar to try to save the children after Victor himself told her what he overheard the boy in white saying to Christopher in the basement of the church. And I really want you to notice how Victor's mom clearly was not wearing a white dress in that scene either. Like what we see in the drawing that Victor claims is of his mother being eaten by the man in yellow at the bottle tree, which is obviously implied to have happened after she got killed by Smiley while wearing this particular outfit. And I want to point out that Victor's dad specifically reacted in this way after seeing this particular drawing. So once again, the writers want us to make the obvious connection that this woman is supposed to be Victor's mom. So unless the man in yellow dressed up Victor's mom like a doll with the white dress after she died, this drawing literally doesn't make any sense. But even that possibility itself is very questionable because we've literally never seen any of the monsters doing anything even close to that to any dead body in the entire show. And the drawing by Victor also obviously implies that she was broken by the monsters while she was already wearing the white dress. And when you consider the fact of how Victor's mother was portrayed in Victor's memory of her in the root cellar and how desperate she was, that clearly wasn't a woman who would have had enough time to start looking for and changing into a new outfit, which would be the white dress, right before she supposedly went to the bottle tree to save the children locked in the tower. So even if you want to entertain that possibility, it just brings you right back to the original question, which is why wasn't she wearing a white dress in Tabitha's memory of how she died at the bottle tree, which Tabitha believes were being sent to her by Victor's mom's spirits. So the discrepancy we see in her appearance right before she left for the bottle tree and after she was killed by Smiley already puts into question the validity of Victor's own memories, because the drawing is not reflective of what she was actually wearing in that moment. And when you consider that on top of all of this, Victor literally says that he saw the man in yellow eating the woman that is supposedly his mother at the bottle tree, and the man in yellow not only did not kill him like what he tried to Julie when she saw him eating someone, but that the man in yellow as well as the music box, the cicadas, and the nightwalkers repeatedly choose not to attack Victor, and that they've allowed him to live in this town for more than 40 years. It's becoming very clear that Victor's memories have to have been manipulated, tweaked, and edited for the purpose of using him to feed disinformation to the population of the town. Because there's only two logical possibilities to explain why Victor's mom was wearing a white dress in Victor's drawing of the man in yellow eating her at the bottle tree, but she was wearing a completely different outfit in Victor's recollection of her in the root cellar and in Tabitha's memory of her being killed by Smiley at the bottle tree. And of course, the first possibility would be that the drawing specifically is the one that is fake. But that immediately brings into question, why does Victor himself believe that it is real? And the second possibility, which I think is far more likely, is that the memory Victor has of his mother in the root cellar itself is the one that is fake, and therefore that it was implanted into his brain by the same being who implanted the memory of Victor's mom being killed at the bottle tree into Tabitha's brain. And the reason why you really need to understand that the vision showing Victor's mom's death at the hands of Smiley came from Tabitha is that it is one of the biggest signs that these supposed memories being experienced by Jade and Tabitha showing their supposed past lives are merely fake memories that have been implanted into their brains to make them believe that they are reincarnations, which is why this next scene matters so much.
Victor was there. When I hugged him, I felt like Miranda was there. I don't know how to explain it, but she was trying to tell me something. She took me back to the night it happened, the night she went to the tree. I could feel her in that room.
What we see here is by far one of the biggest hints given to us by the writers of this story, that literally everything that we have ever believed about what's going on in this story is obviously a lie, and that we are being manipulated in so many different ways that we could never imagine. Because what we really saw happening in this scene is that this memory of Victor's mom being killed at the bottle tree was implanted into Tabitha's brain by the being that we know as the kimono demon, a being we've already seen is not only telepathic, but also has the ability to resurrect and therefore might possibly even be able to create monsters at will. So this is clearly not beyond the scope of his abilities. Like this scene where she sees what supposedly happened to this woman that we have been led to believe is Victor's mom happens right after we saw Tabitha walking into the root cellar, which happened right after we saw the kimono holding down Fatima in the secret room of the root cellar. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that it was the kimono demon whom Tabitha felt being in the room with her that she mistook for Victor's mom. And we know this to be true because we've seen the kimono appearing in Elgin's dreams multiple times, which means that it is a telepathic being, which explains how it was able to insert those fake memories into Tabitha's brain. And remember, we now know conclusively that the memory is fake because Victor's drawing shows us very clearly that by the time Victor's mom was being killed by Smiley, Victor's mom was wearing a white dress. And the reason the entity wants them to believe that they are reincarnations is because as long as the people of the town believe they have hope of somehow someday escaping, they will just continue to suffer endlessly. That's why the entity gave them the quest of saving the children locked in the tower, and it's also why he appeared to Ethan as the ghost of Jim Matthews, which he did to give Ethan the quest to get to the Lake of Tears, which Ethan is going on because of the belief that he will be able to bring his father back to life, which is something that I personally don't believe is going to be happening, at least not from the Lake of Tears, because it's very clear this entire game has been completely rigged in favor of the entity in control of the monsters from top to bottom. And something I want to point out is that we have never seen any of the monsters prior to Boyd's arrival in the town apart from this one scene with Victor's mom. The reason why this is so important is because we've literally seen the monsters changing multiple times in the last 30 days that the current story has been taking place. So basically what I'm saying is that we do not know if Smiley running at Victor's mom means anything at all, because we have no idea about how different the behaviors of the monsters was 40 years ago in Fromville to what it is today. I.e., it's possible that every single one of them were running at the people every single time that they saw them. And I think assuming that they used to behave the same as they do now is a mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to understanding what happened in this scene. But even all of what we're talking about here is barely even scratching the surface of just how badly we are being manipulated by the evil forces of this town. Like, just watch what I'm about to show you.
Everything that survived the storm is rotten. Boyd, we're out of food.
Donna, you all right?
Plants keep dying. It's like they're growing in poisoned soil.
Now, what we are looking at right here in this scene with Donna is one of the biggest clues given to us by the writers of this show of how the evil forces living in this town are constantly manipulating us towards very specific outcomes that are only beneficial to the monsters themselves. Like, what I want you to notice here is that the rope that they were pulling on at the village, which appears to be connected to the giant doll monsters that we saw in the trailer for season 4, this rope was buried underneath the same plot of land where the cabbages were growing on top of. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that the cabbages were specifically placed there by the entity in control of the monsters because he knew that the people of the town would eventually unearth and pull the rope and therefore inevitably reawaken the giant doll monsters that had seemingly been trapped and contained in the lake by a previous group of people who were living in Fromland in some unspecified time in the past. In other words, the placement of the cabbages was clearly a trap designed to lure us into bringing these giant doll monsters back so that the entity could use them to destroy the people of the town. Like, we already know that the entity has control over the fertility of the soil because he destroyed the crops at Colony House so that Smiley would have something to eat while he was growing inside of Fatima's belly. So when you think about how the Nightwalkers were freeing and killing the livestock of the people of the town while the entity himself poisoned the crops, it becomes very obvious that it was the entity that grew these cabbages at the village out by the lake by manipulating the fertility of the soil, knowing that the people of the town would continuously gather cabbages from this patch until they inevitably ended up freeing the giant doll monsters. Because think about this, it's specifically because of the fact that the entity and these monsters attacked their food supply that the people of the town felt desperate enough to start going over to the village by the lake in order to collect cabbages that they could bring back. So this obviously cannot be a coincidence. The entire thing was always a trap. And there's very many signs in this very same episode of just how badly we are being played by the entity in control of the monsters, which is why you need to pay attention very closely to what I'm about to show you.
I heard the voices. They want you to know that she's afraid and that something took her. They know you won't find her in time. They were laughing.
This moment with Sarah is very important for us as it's one of the very few scenes in the entire show where the writers explicitly give us direct scenes of the motivations behind the entities living in the town. Because this scene obviously directly ties into what happened with the man in yellow and Sarah in this very same episode. Because what I want you to notice here is that Sarah specifically used the word voices when she was describing to Elgin what they had asked her to do while they were in the church. So this means that despite him being what is seemingly an individual, the man in yellow was still able to project multiple voices at the same time into Sarah's brain. So now we know why Sarah said that the voices were laughing at the people in this town and saying that they would never be able to find Fatima before it was too late, i.e. before Smiley was already reborn. Now this directly implies that the man in yellow is working with the monsters and the kimono demon. Or at a bare minimum, it means that he is working against the people of the town. And this shows us just how badly we are being manipulated by the evil forces of Fromland. Because when you consider the fact that we've literally seen the man in yellow changing not only his body but his voice as well, it opens up the very likely possibility that he was the being whose voice Sarah heard in her head calling Boyd Mr. Fish and Loaves when they were out in the forest. Because he could literally just have changed his voice to sound like Boyd's wife. But to be honest, that wouldn't even be necessary because Sarah never even met Boyd's wife. So the yellow man could literally just have changed into any female voice and Sarah would never have been able to tell the difference. And I do want to point out that it's possible that the reason why there is such a vast network of deep underground tunnels is so that the man in yellow could subvert the seeming limitation of distance required before he can affect someone with his telepathic ability. Like if he's standing in the tunnels below a particular house, then he can still project voices into your head. But what this also means is that the voices who told Sarah to kill the boy were most likely just the man in yellow. Because the reason Sarah believed them is because those voices knew 2 cars would be coming into the town before they arrived. But we've literally seen in this season that the man in yellow was waiting for the pastor before he arrived. Which means that Sarah was being played by the voices that entire time because the same being controlling the voices, i.e. the man in yellow, is the same people who brings people into the town. Or at the very least, he is working with whoever it is that is bringing people into the town. So that's how the voices knew in advance who would be coming into the town. This is just one of the many pieces of evidence showing how badly we are being deceived by the evil forces of Fromfield. Like even when you look at Boyd, there's so many signs that the entity always wanted him to kill Smiley. So go watch this video right here to see my explanation on why the entire thing from Boyd getting infected with the worms to him infecting Smiley with them was obviously by design and clearly not a coincidence.